Hello and welcome into week 2 of Ravens Unscripted. What a way to kick off the 2018 season. 47-3 over the Buffalo Bills, the largest margin of victory since 2009 for the Baltimore Ravens. I guess it's time to start booking tickets to Atlanta. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let me introduce the panel for this week's show. We know Garrett Downey and Cliff Brown of Ravens Media, and Dennis Pitta back with us, the future voice of the Ravens, maybe. I know.
The voice of the Ravens.
Yeah, you seem pretty comfortable. Sorry, Jerry Sandusky. And guys, let's start, as we always do, with 4 downs. Down number 1, Garrett, you'll kick us off, as always. The margin of victory, as I mentioned, the best since 2009. It was dominant. But is this the Ravens being that good, or them going up against a Bills team that, look, I think we can all honestly say, probably a bit undermanned?
Yeah, I mean, I look at it, and the Bills team is just not a good team. But more than that, I think this Ravens team on both sides of the ball impressed me. I mean, I particularly looked to the offense, and they had everything at their disposal. Go back to this point last year, and really John Harbaugh said it going into the game. They were basic through the first half of last season because of the injury to the quarterback and the weapons. They didn't have the time to develop that chemistry with Joe Flacco. It's a totally different story. I look at their creativity and play calling. I look at the execution in terms of the big plays. Just basically everything about the offense has improved, and so that makes me feel like this wasn't just a Ravens team going up against a bad Bills team. The Ravens team itself is much better than we've seen in the past.
Well, I'm convinced that Nathan Peterman is bad, okay? But I'm also convinced that the Ravens offense is much better. I love the wide receiver additions. I love the fact that Ravens receivers were wide open. I mean, Joe had time to throw, which always makes a big difference. But also when he did throw, guys were open. He had clear windows to throw to, whether it's to the tight ends or the wide receivers. So I love the diversity of the Ravens offense. I think that's something that's going to help them throughout the season.
Yeah, listen, this was an impressive win and an impressive game all around from all 3 phases. But we have to understand this was one game, and I think Terrell Suggs said it best, that this is one game and it's a long season. It's a marathon. I don't think we can overreact to this game, but this is certainly a foundation to build off and have a lot of optimism and be excited moving forward.
And I think there was an understanding, again, that the Bills are very young, and this is a team that could honestly be one of the worst in the NFL this season. Down number 2. Dennis, we always bring you in for Joe Flacco. Context,
I'm the
advice.
Joe Flacco expert.
It's your insider. It might be your way to hang around in this business, depending on how Joe does.
It's my only in
But
the industry.
In all seriousness, how would you evaluate his performance yesterday in context to some of his better games over the first 10 years in his career?
Well, I think this game in particular was incredibly impressive for this reason. It was a rainstorm the entire game. The field was wet, the ball was wet, everybody's hands were wet, but Joe Flacco stood up there and delivered the ball like it was sunny and completely dry. And I think that was the most impressive thing from yesterday. And so, he threw to 9 different guys. He was throwing the ball all over the field. All 3 of his receivers got touchdowns. I mean, it was an impressive from start to finish by him. And you look at the other side of the ball, his counterpart, like Cliff mentioned, Nathan Peterman. It looked like it was a rainstorm that he was playing, and it did not look that way for Joe Flacco.
You know what I liked about the offense and particularly the game plan yesterday is that the Ravens knew it was going to be rainy. I mean, all day long it was pouring rain, but they didn't say, you know what, let's just pack it in and try to run the ball. They opened it up from the very start of that game and that opening drive. I mean, they wanted to throw the ball, and they were able to do that. And so, last week we talked about how confident Joe seemed and the chemistry with his receivers, I think, is a big piece of that. Well, now we got to see it in action. He has something with these receivers, I think, that he didn't have last season. And it's not that one guy is getting the job done. I think it's the way they complement each other. Michael Crabtree is a red zone threat. Smokey Brown brings the deep game. And then Willie Snead, somebody that can work the middle of the field just like you used to do. And I think that gives them something that they sorely needed on offense.
Yeah, it's a carryover from what we saw during the preseason from Joe. And, him being healthy, I think, is just a big thing that you cannot underrate. I mean, he was able to go from the start of training camp all the way through preseason, getting reps. Eric Weddle mentioned it after the game yesterday that Joe, week 1 last year, he's basically playing for the first time. That's very difficult, even for someone with his experience. So I just think he has really built a lot of chemistry with the receivers and a lot of trust and confidence himself over the last 4 months, and it's just carried over into week 1.
Yeah, it's incredible to think if he had actually played the whole game, what his numbers may have been in this one. 3rd down. Let's move to the defensive side of the ball. And we've seen this before. Week 1, last year, this defense was dominant. We saw that again on Sunday against the Bills. Cliff, do you think this is the type of defense that fans should expect week in and week out?
Well, not giving up any.
Within reason, but you know where I'm going with this.
I do, and to Dennis's point, I do think I was impressed too in the locker room how not only just Suggs, but all the defensive players were saying this is just one game because they clearly remember, having a great performance in Week 1 last year, and they also clearly remember how the season ended for them last year. So I think there's a quiet determination among the Ravens defense to be better from start to finish this year, but I think they are a better defense. Tavon Young obviously has a huge impact at getting him back. I think they're deeper, faster on defense, still able to create turnovers. I think it's a better defense.
Last year's opening game, there's some smoke and mirrors for the Ravens defense, if you remember. There was 5 turnovers, and a couple of those were in the red zone. So the Bengals moved the ball on them last year. This week, it was just total domination. The Bills didn't get a first down in the entire first half. They got turnovers. This defense was just so much – they absolutely dominated the game, and that's the difference, I think, compared to last year's opener.
Yeah, and this defense was impressive, and they were as advertised. They returned virtually everybody that were starters last year with the absence of Jimmy Smith, but you look at Marlon Brown and Brandon Carr, they both played really well in their own right yesterday, and so they're okay, and they're deep. This is a top 5 defense. I don't think it's realistic to say that they're going to play at this level each and every week, but this is a top 5 defense in the league, in my opinion.
Yeah, they just can't have those drop-offs like we saw in London last year against the Jags. 4th down, guys, quickly here, and Dennis, I'll start with you. From the player's perspective, how much will last year's Bengals game be in the mind of these guys on Thursday, knowing what it did to them at the end of 2017?
Well, it's a tough way to end a season, certainly. And back in 2016, when I was still playing, we ended a similar way to the Steelers. And you never forget those types of games, but it was last season, and they're focused on this season. It's always difficult to go into Cincinnati and get a win there, and so that's what they're focused on. They have a short week. The preparation is going to be limited. The practices physically won't be what they need to be, but it's one of those games that they know what's at stake. They know how difficult of a team, and they're not expecting this to be like last year. This is a good Bengals team who looked really good yesterday, and they have got their work cut out for them.
Before we head to break, let's take a look at our top play of the game from the Sky Cam presented by Long Fence.
The throw, running to his right. Sets, going deep, far side of the field. He's got Crabtree wide open. Now that's John Brown who makes a catch at the 33, and he's down at the 31 with a first down. A 29-yard gain, and so much for the heavy ball, windy and wet conditions. Flacco threw right through it.
Off and running here on Unscripted. Coming up next, it's issue or non-issue. Stay with us. Welcome back to Unscripted. Time for issue or non-issue. I'll present some storylines from Sunday's games, and the guys will tell me if it's an issue, something to worry about, or no need to worry at all, non-issue. First up, and Cliff, you get us started here. Lamar Jackson, we saw the unveiling, maybe, of the plan here early. Not talking about what he did late when he came in for Joe, but some of the trickery. I think it probably left a little bit to be desired. Is this an issue or non-issue that it wasn't as effective as maybe they would want it to be?
It's a non-issue for me because I think it'll get better as the season progresses. Also, I think it was important for the Ravens to establish Lamar as a guy they will go to and a guy that you have to game plan for. And I think they did that successfully. Even though he didn't make splash plays doing it, I think that it's in the minds now of all their opponents that Lamar is somebody who at any time they can line up and use in various ways. And I got to believe if you get Lamar Jackson on the field for enough touches this year, he will make some big plays. So I think it's a non-issue.
Can I jump in real quick? Just, Dennis, how much time would a team actually spend in practice working on something like this off of what they saw from Lamar? Because we always hear that, and then I'm always curious, is it like 15 minutes or is it like 45? Like this is 8 plays we really got to be dialed in for.
Well, it's tough to quantify how many minutes they're actually going to spend, but they're going to spend time thinking about it. They're going to spend time game planning for it. They're going to spend time in practice dedicated to plays against the scout team with a Lamar Jackson running around there. So there is going to be time dedicated to it, and throughout the entire game, they'll always have that in their mind. When Lamar comes into the game, what are they going to do? Are they going to try a double pass, maybe a reverse, whatever it may be? And I have to disagree. I do say it's a non-issue with how they used him because I like how they used him. I thought that it was really creative in a lot of the things they did, splitting him out at receiver, bringing him in motion, faking jet sweeps to him, throwing him in reverse, doing all kinds of things, then putting him in the backfield. Joe split out wide, running a zone read. I thought there were some really creative things that they can continue to expand upon, have him throw a couple times, do some different things like that. I think they have a really nice package and a creative package that they can continue to unfold.
Yeah, I would also agree. I think it's a non-issue. I just would say that the Ravens have to make sure that it doesn't become an issue if they don't work. You know, the question is, how often do you use these kinds of plays? And we were all kind of low last week when we talked about this. I thought maybe 3 or 4 times a game. You know, it looks like they're going to use this as a pretty significant piece of the offense. The key is you just don't want to kind of stall things. The offense was moving yesterday. They didn't have as much success when he came in and they ran those plays. So you just need to keep it from becoming an issue if it's not working early in the year.
Let's move to special teams. Janarian Grant's first game as the primary returner. He had some explosive plays, and then we know the fumble was there as well. Garrett, we'll start with you. Issue or non-issue, what you're seeing from Grant in really his first live action of the regular season?
What I think is an issue is ball security, because he did have a fumble in the preseason and then he had a fumble yesterday. Now, I will forgive the fumble yesterday because it came maybe the hardest rainstorm of the game and everybody was kind of coughing it up at times. So I think that you can forgive that, but ball security as a punt returner is the most important thing for that player. So I think that I'm a little concerned about that because we have now seen it in 2 games. So that's what I'm going to be watching moving forward.
I think it's a non-issue. I thought he played really well yesterday considering what you had to catch a punt in. I mean, it is not easy to catch a punt to begin. Have you ever caught a punt, Garrett?
I've caught it in the backyard. Did you catch
so
punts?
That doesn't,
You never were a punt returner.
I was a terrific punt returner in high school.
Okay.
I can show you my highlight tape sometime.
He's got it on his phone.
Yeah.
I don't have it on my phone, but I'll show you. It's on VHS. It's terrific. But listen, it was really difficult to field punts, and I thought he did a great job all day of locating the ball, not letting it hit the ground, getting under it, fair catching. He had the explosive play that he probably should have scored on if he kept on the sideline, in my opinion. But he looked really, really good. He didn't look like an undrafted rookie free agent back there catching punts. Now, he did have the one muff, but, I mean, it was a rainstorm. It was really impressive performance, I thought, from him.
Yeah, it's a non-issue for me because I love the aggressiveness that he runs with. If he does have a problem with ball security, which I don't think he will, they'll make a change. But I think he's got a chance to make some plays for them this year.
All right, well, last one quickly here. No longer can talk about Brashad Perryman, but we can talk about the running game because I feel like whenever things are going well, we got to address the running game. Alex Collins, only 7 attempts for 13 yards. We know the fumble. Is this an issue or non-issue, Cliff?
I think it's a non-issue because I love the way Alex Collins is running with so much authority. I also like the way he wasn't used in the preseason, and I think that he's still going to have a big year. They didn't need Alex Collins yesterday playing against the Buffalo Bills, but they'll need him for the next 15 games. I think he's ready to have a big year. I love the way the offensive line blocked. They had over 100 yards rushing, and Joe had a lot of times to throw. That, to me, translates into a big year for Alex Collins.
Yeah, I think it's a non-issue also. Go ahead, Dennis.
Well, I was going to say I think it's an issue.
Oh, okay.
I disagree with you guys because, listen, he had fumbling issues at the beginning of last year as well. If you remember, when they brought him up from the practice squad, his first couple games, he put the ball on the ground a few times and got benched for a little bit because of it. Coach Harbaugh does not tolerate turnovers. He does not tolerate fumbles, especially from the running back position. And you look at what Kenneth Dixon did yesterday, I thought he ran really well, and hopefully he's healthy and can continue to play. He earned himself some more playing time. So if you're Alex Collins, I'd be a little bit worried about that.
Get it right on Thursday. Well, speaking of Alex Collins, let's take a fantastic view of his touchdown with the 360 form presented by AAA.
Alex Collins, the deep back. Patrick Ricard, the up back. Flacco under center. Gives it to Collins right at the middle. He's got a hole to the 5, to the 2. Lunges forward. Goal line. Touchdown, Ravens.
Coming up next, we check in the rest of the AFC North with Love It or Hate It. We embrace passion here on Unscripted, so that's why we always have a Love It or Hate It on the show. And much like an issue or non-issue, we'll present some questions, some statements, and you guys will let me know if you love it or hate it. First up, in the AFC North, we saw a tie yesterday, Dennis. Do you love or hate the fact, now that there was a tie, I think we all hate that, but what it does for the standings potentially for the Ravens down the road?
Well, I love it because 2 potential division foes, neither of them got wins. And the Browns broke their losing streak, and they still didn't get a win. And then in typical Browns
Best
fashion.
start, though, for them in a long time.
Great start. Great start. So, I mean, it's just funny to see a tie. It's so weird. But I thought it was enjoyable. I loved it.
Yeah, I hated it because they had a chance for the Steelers to take an L, and there was a 43-yard field goal in overtime to win it, and they couldn't knock it in. And so I would have much preferred to see the Steelers get that first loss than both teams not get a win. So, yeah, I guess it's better than the Steelers winning, but I hated it.
Yeah, I love it from the Ravens' perspective. Anytime the Steelers don't win, I think you have to love it, especially don't win against Cleveland. I don't see that hurting the Ravens in any way when you start adding up the standings down the stretch.
All right, Garrett, I joked about it off the top of the show. Super Bowl and Ravens have been put in the same sentence now after week one. Do you love or hate the hype train that gets created when you have that type of performance?
I love it because I think that this is a really good team, and I think that if
You're in the hype business.
Yeah, I'm in the hype business. Everyone jump on the bandwagon. I'm over here making my reservations for Atlanta right now. But yeah, in all honesty, I think that it's good to have a team that has high expectations, and if the hype starts to build around them, I'm fine with that. I don't necessarily think that you need to just stay quiet and stay under the radar at all times. At some point, to be a good team, you have to have all eyeballs on you and go win it, and I'm fine with the hype train starting early.
No, I hate it, actually. I think it'll work to the Ravens' advantage if they stay under the radar all year. They've got some young guys who haven't been really in the position of being the hunted before. I think the Ravens have a tradition of really embracing the underdog role, much like the Eagles did last year. I think that's the Ravens' best version of themselves when they are the underdog, so I hate it.
Yeah, I hate it too. I mean, I think it's such a long season. There's so many highs and lows, and this is just one game. It's one game at a time. You can't get too excited about it. You can't get too low on losses. It's just one step in the process.
Well, keeping with cliches, Dennis, the nonstop grind that this team's been under from the early start to training camp and now a Thursday night game right out of the gate. Do you love or hate that they're having this sort of challenge presented to them right now?
Well, I love it from this standpoint. They had a really long offseason, long preseason with 5 games, playing in the Hall of Fame game. But the coaches got an opportunity because it's a Thursday night game so early in the season. They got an opportunity to already game plan for the most part for this game. So typically during that training camp time or whatever, the coaches will game plan for game 1, 2, potentially even to game 3, and then beyond that, it kind of goes week by week. And so they have a game plan together, which is an advantage on a condensed week because there's not much time to game plan. The Ravens today, which would normally be a day off, are already in the building. They have walkthroughs, they have meetings, they're going over the game plan, and so it gives them a little bit of advantage from that standpoint.
I love it because you get the Thursday night game out of the way early. And when we look at Sunday's game, that was almost like a preseason game because the starters got pulled in the middle of the third quarter, so they got to kind of rest. I think it's a good thing to knock it out early. And now all of this sort of depends on whether you win. If you get that win and you're 2-0, you've already got the Thursday night game out of the way, you're feeling great. If we're having this conversation next week and it's after a loss and you're feeling like, okay, now you're 1-1 after that Thursday night game, you're not feeling so good. But generally speaking, I like having it early in the year.
Yeah, I love it in that, hey, it's almost a win-win for the Ravens. They're on the road, short week. If they lose, it's not devastating. If they win, go 2-0 now with 10 days off, you have to love that.
Well, guys, that'll do it for this episode of Ravens Unscripted. Dennis, always good to see you. Garrett and Cliff, great job as always. And a friendly reminder, September 23rd, the Ravens will be back at home at M&T Bank Stadium to take on the Denver Broncos. And you won't want to miss this game because we will be honoring Ray Lewis, the newest Hall of Fame inductee. So it should be a fun one. Enjoy what is a short football week. We'll see you back here very soon on the Unscripted Couch.